We love supporting and promoting the creators of musical theater throughout the world, and we would love to have your support as well. Go to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the Become a Patron button, because a supportive community is a strong community. Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Yovanov. It may be hard to remember, but there was a before time. A time when we could travel freely. And last October, I made the trip down to New York for a week. I was there to meet people, do interviews, and of course, I had to see some shows, right? So I saw about 5 in total, and all of them were off-Broadway because I wanted to see shows that I never would be able to see in Toronto, because all the big shows come through there, and I'm able to see the Come From Away and the well, pretty much all of them. But I wanted to see things I'd never seen before, and B, I can't afford the Broadway shows. Let's be honest. Off Broadway, I can afford a little bit more. I saw 5 of them, and one stood out for me. I laughed so much during the show. It made me laugh so much. It was called Scotland, PA. Now, if we skip ahead 8 months, I got an email saying, would I be interested in playing some of the songs from this person? And lo and behold, it was a book writer from Scotland, PA. And today I'm lucky enough to speak with the creative team of that show. So I'd like to welcome Adam Gwon and Michael Mitnick to the show. Adam, Michael, welcome.
Thanks, Jean-Paul.
Thank you for having us.
Oh,
yeah,
no problem.
Excited to be here virtually.
I know, it's insane what we have to do now, just to talk to each other. But then again, I would have done this anyways because you guys are in New York. I'm in Toronto, so doing the interviews easier this way. So cool. So I start off every one of my interviews the same way. I want to ask, what is your 30-second bio? So Adam, let's start with you. Who is Adam in 30 seconds?
Oh my goodness, I feel like I'm on a game show. My name is Adam. I'm a musical theater songwriter. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I initially was like a classical piano kid who got bitten by the theater bug, and all of a sudden one day, like a bolt of lightning, realized that I could combine those two interests because people needed to write musicals. That was a thing that people had to do in the world for there to be musicals. And so here I am today.
Awesome. And that was 26 seconds. So you do
all right.
No points deducted. Congratulations. All right. Michael, can you beat 26 seconds on this new game show?
Probably not. My name is Michael Mitnick. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up taking similarly piano lessons. I started writing original musicals in high school and college. When I got out of college, I wanted to write for Sesame Street. That didn't really work out. And then I got in miraculously into the Yale School of Drama, where I wrote serious stuff for 3 years. And then immediately upon graduation, went back to writing comedies, one of which is Scotland, PA.
Nice. Perfect. All right. So let's take it back to the beginning with the both of you. Adam, when you were growing up, were you always into musical theater? You said you played piano and classical, but were you always into musical theater? Is that something you discovered a little later in life?
I discovered it a little bit later, in that I started piano at a very young age. I just kind of, I was the black sheep of the family in that way, and was, as a very young toddler, just always drawn to keyboards whenever I encountered one, and would go up, to the music store in the mall and just sound out songs that I had heard on the radio on the keyboard. And so my parents very astutely thought, hey, he has this natural affinity for pianos. Let's put him in piano lessons. And my neighbor at the time in Baltimore happened to be the organist for the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. So I just started taking piano lessons with my neighbor. And it wasn't until a bit later that I got interested in theater. I sort of on a lark, when I was going into high school, the Baltimore school systems was launching a magnet school program. So all of these brand new high schools opened the year that I was going to be a freshman. And one of those schools was a school for the arts. And I had kind of been like part of the drama club and doing artsy things. And something about this new school just called to me, and so I auditioned for it for the theater program, and got accepted. And so spent 4 years at this high school for the arts, as a theater student, but really not even invested in musicals yet. The lightning bolt moment that I spoke about in my game show segments, came. I think it was my freshman year of high school, because I was part of this theater high school. We went to all of the shows at Baltimore Center Stage, which is the big equity regional theater in Baltimore. And, they have student matinees, and we just went to all of them through school. And one of the shows they did was a pre-New York tryout of this very wacky musical called Das Barbecue, which is a country western retelling of Wagner's Ring Cycle, and we were obsessed with it. It was just so funny, and all of these like now celebrities were in the production. It was like Carolee Carmello and Sally Mays and Jeff McCarthy and all these people, and J.K. Simmons, who's now like a movie star, who we had no idea. We were 13, 14 years old, just going to the show at the local theater. But that as part of going to those student matinees, they gave us study guides as well as the script for all of the shows that we could kind of look at with our teachers either before or after we saw the show. And I remember getting the script, seeing this musical and being blown away by it, and realizing that people wrote musicals, that these were things that human beings willed into being. And we got the script, and the composer's contact information was on the cover page of the script, because it was just the version of the script they sent around. It wasn't a published version or anything. So I wrote a letter to that composer, the guy named Scott Warrender, and I wrote this letter that was basically like, wait, hold the presses. You write musicals for a living. Like, how does this work? What's going on here? And sadly, the letter got returned because I guess he had moved and that address was no longer valid. So I got the letter sent back to me with my questions unanswered. But I think that kind of set me up on this quest to figure out how someone goes about writing a musical. And that kind of started me down that path.
Wow. Well, maybe Scotland, PA will be another kid's Das Barbecue.
Maybe, that would be incredible.
Now, they probably won't send an actual letter. They don't know how to use pens anymore.
Right, exactly.
Or a text of some kind. Or 8 emojis. I don't know.
Yes, totally. A TikTok. They'll send me a TikTok about.
How did you get into musical theater? Were you always a theater kid?
I performed in like camp plays and school plays, but really it was something that was drilled into my head when I was about 5 or 6 years old. When I was going to sleep, and I heard a very loud ringing in my ears that was always there, and it just, for some reason, it just drove me nuts to a point where I couldn't handle it. And I remember waking folks, and my father said, "Oh no, I was hoping this wouldn't happen, but you also have something called tinnitus or tinnitus, depending on how different people say it different ways, which is just a constant ringing in my ears." Mm-hmm. And so in complete silence, I couldn't fall asleep, which meant that my parents went up to the attic and brought down my mom's record player and their vinyl collection, which aside from the Who's Tommy and a couple of Beatles albums was almost entirely musical theater. Everything from How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying to Green Willow, really how Stop the World I Want to Get Off, stuff that isn't, exactly getting revived these days. Mm-hmm. And so for years, I just had it poured into my ear. And then by the time I was taking piano lessons and starting to compose, because my older sister started to write music, I just thought, well, you know what, maybe I should try writing one of these. And I wrote to a fellow Pittsburgher who I saw in the his parents in the phone book, and I said, "Can you pass this on to one of my heroes?" And his name was Stephen Flaherty, wrote Ragtime, Once in the Silence, Seussical, Anastasia, all these shows. And they sent along my student show, and he wrote back the most encouraging and also constructive 10-page single-space typed letter about everything from, what is a false accent to story and plot notes. And then my response to this was not just to say thank you, but to say, hey, do you need any, I'd read my Sondheim biography. And so I was like, hey, do you need any help for the summer? Or as you're getting a coffee, or as a gopher on Pipe Dream? And so he said, yeah. And I worked for them, Ahrens and Flaherty, for about 3 shows. And it was mostly just watching them work and hearing their feedback. And then also at the BMI musical theater writing program, I should say as well, oriented me until the first show, Fly By Night at Playwrights Horizons, got on.
Wow, that's great. That's nice story. Like, I wish I had one like that.
They're incredible people, and believe they're also, real mentors of Adams.
They are,
funnily enough.
Wow.
Yeah, they used to run a program called the Dramatist Guild Fellowship, which was a year-long fellowship for emerging playwrights and musical theater writers. They sort of curated and ran the musical theater portion of it. And I met them doing a songwriting workshop, and then later was invited to be part of this fellowship program. And it's actually through that program that I wrote my first show, Ordinary Days. And so they had a big hand in sort of helping that show become what it became.
Well, it's crazy how small, like, the musical theater world is huge, but it's incredible how small it is. The 6 degrees of separation I've been finding, just as simple as that you guys work with the same people. And it's funny you mentioned Ordinary Days and Fly By Night, because I played both of those shows on the station already.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Cecily Smith, I love that song. I'd
so
never
good.
heard of it before. I love that song.
Thank you.
So now you've discovered you love theater, you love musical theater. You went to post-secondary. Where did you go to post-secondary, Adam? Was it for musical theater, I assume?
I went to NYU in their undergrad drama program. So my focus going in was on performing, because that's sort of like what I knew and how I was really involved in theater in high school. And funnily enough, they have a rule there that freshmen aren't allowed to audition for productions because they want students to kind of acclimate to the city and focus on their academics and that kind of thing. But I really wanted to be involved in productions, and there was no rule about freshmen music directing productions. So I started music directing productions, and that led to being asked to write incidental music for student play productions. So that was sort of my first dipping my toe in the composing world. I kind of became the go-to guy at NYU to score your play production. And I had a teacher there who was a composer and started encouraging me, and just started writing songs. So by the time that I graduated, I kind of knew that writing was the thing that I wanted to pursue. That had eclipsed performing. In fact, the last show I performed in was my senior year at NYU, and I've never looked back.
I know there's always that turning point, that moment when almost all of us want to start on stage, and then we have that moment where we go, you know what? I love theater. I don't need to be in the spotlight. I want to just be involved with it. All right. So, Michael, you're at Yale, right? You said you went to Yale.
Yeah.
What took you to New York? Once you finished Yale, because you said you wrote drama, and then you wanted to get back to musicals. Is that what took you to New York? And how did that come about?
Yeah, my third year, I wrote a play called Sex Lives of Our Parents. That was a drama, or I should say like a straight play, but a comedy. Mm-hmm. And that got on its second stage Uptown. So that was the way that I got really into it. And then simultaneously, I was writing a musical that with Adam Gettle and Craig Lucas that unfortunately disbanded.
Mm-hmm.
But I had gotten kind of into the scene a little bit, and this musical that called Fly By Night that two of my friends and I had written just as on a lark as a summer show at Yale to do as kind of dinner theater kept going. So we followed the show to two productions at Theater Works in California, and then a production at Dallas Theater Center, and then it came into Playwrights Horizons. But that was really my introduction, aside from doing kind of little nights here and there of songs, or a song at Joe's Pub or something like that. And then it also was a way to start separating what I did, because before I was doing book music and lyrics, and then for Fly By Night I did some of everything, and then for Scotland just book, and then for a different project just music, and that was eye-opening.
Nice. So you're already in New York, Adam, because you went to school there, right? And then
Yeah.
Michael, you headed to New York. So how did these parallel lines, the two of you, converge? Where did you meet? How did it happen?
It was through the Roundabout, who ended up producing Scotland, PA. They had done Ordinary Days in their black box space, the Roundabout Underground, which is their space for writers who are having their first professional New York production. And part of that program is that they produce your show in the black box theater, and then they commission you to write another one. And I had written Ordinary Days entirely on my own, and for my commission wanted to write something of a little bigger scale, and was really interested in collaborating with a book writer. So Roundabout set me up on blind dates with 3 different playwrights who they liked and thought I would get along with. And so one of those was at a coffee shop in the East Village where I met Michael Mitnick, and we just kind of hit it off, and funnily enough, I remember right off the bat, Scotland, PA was one of the ideas that Michael had in his back pocket that he'd been thinking about for a while. So I went and watched the movie and fell in love with the idea of making a musical out of it as well. And so we embarked on the project, but we were introduced by Jill Rafson, who's now the Associate Artistic Director at the Roundabout.
Very cool. That's a TV show I'd watch, musical theater blind date.
Totally. A very niche reality show.
Exactly. Throw that out there. You want to do it, it's yours. I'm just throwing it. So Michael, you sat down with Adam. You're having a coffee in the shop. Well, what was it? Was it right away that you felt that the two of you guys could work together, or what was it that made it work? That spark.
I could tell immediately that Adam was both like a kind person, a rational person who operated out of reality despite being exceedingly creative and talented, and also just a generous person, because I'd also sort of asked around a little bit. And there'd been a couple different musicals, probably 4, that I had worked on with other people and Adam had his collaborations, and a lot of times it's hard that people, certainly people get attached to things, but at a certain point you have to collaborate, and it has to feel like we both want to make the same thing, and that it gets to a point of being egoless. And I just got this clear vibe of enthusiasm from Adam. I also knew and was a fan of Ordinary Days, so I knew what kinds of stuff I had heard him write. And thus when he's like, all right, what do you got? And I'd loved Scotland, PA as a movie by Billy Morissette, written and directed since I was in high school. And I was just like, I think this is something that should have really, really tuneful period rock songs with smart, funny lyrics, you know, that in our wildest dreams would be something compared to something like Little Shop of Horrors. And so it really felt like Adam got the same kind of thing that I was going for.
Nice. And please,
please,
sorry, I was going to say, please, Adam, please say you said, okay, what do you got? Please say you actually did say that.
I did, and exactly with that line reading. I came in with like a fedora and a trench coat, like lit up my cigarette, threw the lighter on the table.
He's like, I just came from a meeting with David Henry Hwang and also a meeting with Lisa Crone. So what would you, most successful writer of Fly By Night, have for me?
This would be a great TV show. I do want to see this now. So you've got Scotland, PA in your back pocket that you really wanted to do. What was the next step after you and Adam had talked to each other, or Adam, if you want to answer this, what was the next step after you've decided this is where we want to go?
First we brought the idea to the Roundabout to see if it was something that they would be interested in sign off on. And they were excited about it as well. So we had to get the rights because it's a film. So we had to get the rights to adapt it. And fortunately, because Roundabout was behind the project, since it was a commission, they kind of took the lead and worked their magic and found out, you know, who owned the rights and what we had to do to get the rights to adapt it. And I think we kind of lucked out. We had a pretty smooth, easy process in terms of getting the rights. I think we had one phone call with the head of the independent studio that owned the rights, and they were really excited about the possibility of a musical, and the only thing they said to us was, you know, we want to keep it set in 1975, which is when the film is set, and we said, so do we. That's part of what excites us about this, is writing some classic rock. Yeah, so we got the rights for the Roundabout. We're able to connect with Billy Morissette, who wrote and directed the film, who just became an amazing champion and sounding board for us throughout the process. He had lived in that world of the adaptation for so long that he had really smart things to say and really great feedback to give us after all of our readings, but at the same time kind of let us do our own thing, and understood that to translate it to this new medium of the stage, that we had to take some liberties with the original film. So, and he gave us his blessing to do so. So we kind of lucked out in that regard as well.
Nice. It's probably a little easier with an independent film like that to get, you know, the rights a little bit easier, because you can get to that person, because they want to see it continue to live, and if they love the project, way easier. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Michael, when you were going through the script, the screenplay, let me rephrase that, was there things that you and the original writer, you know, was there any clashing or anything like that, or was it pretty copacetic and symbiotic, the way it worked?
It was I mean, that would probably be a good time to just like briefly say, like, it's an odd show based on an odd movie. It's the story of the Scottish play transferred on top of a shitty burger restaurant in a real town called Scotland, PA, but it is the fictional story of the genesis of a McDonald's-like empire called Macbeths. And so Pat and Mac, the Macbeths, who are these very low-level employees and are tired of getting stepped on, accidentally murder the boss and then transform it into their dream empire. And at the same time, there's a local detective out of Harrisburg, Macduff, who's there and hot on their tail. And so that's what the show is about. And it's a show about, you know, much like the original Shakespeare, ambition and greed. And it was a challenge, not really because there was anything that I was averse to in the original film, but with a film, Billy could do a remarkable job of striking this really cool tone and also bringing the camera close to these incredible actors. So as they're going through emotional changes, that can register very clearly with an audience. Whereas on stage in a musical, when there's this goal of ambition, I'll return to something like How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. You have a major ambitious storyline, but that's also tied right along with the Rosemary storyline, the love plot. And in Scotland, PA, we've got a married couple already who goes, we want to take over and kill some people so we can have a better life. And as an audience, you go like, that's kind of dark and funny, but like, I don't know if I can really root for these people. So instead, it was just taking the foundation of what Billy had adapted from Shakespeare into his film, and then trying to take it to another step of massaging the story in a way that there could be more of an emotional entrance to the characters of Mac and Pat, and then also to the son of the boss, Malcolm, who has a new storyline. So it really was just taking it, I'd say, another 30 yards rather than reinventing the wheel.
You've got the rights. You're starting to work on it. What did you find any difficulties with the show, either with musically because it's 70s style, or working with already a set piece that you kind of had to adhere to with work-wise? Adam, why don't you start with the music part and the lyrics?
Yeah. Well, I was really excited about the world of the 1970s. I kind of did a deep dive very early in the process, just of lots of 1970s pop music, and there's so many styles going on during that period in a really exciting way, and all of those songs and that music was so theatrical. I think that's the thing that really struck me when I really did a deep dive on it, is that everything from Elton John to the Eagles to David Bowie, Lynyrd Skynyrd, like they weren't afraid in those songs to be really theatrical in the music and the storytelling. So it became a really exciting palette that I was really eager to explore in musicals. And I hadn't really heard kind of like a classic rock, a contemporary look at classic, like a classic rock world in a musical. So it was exciting to feel like dipping my toe in that world. And I think the biggest challenge was along the lines of what Michael was saying in terms of tone. Like the movie strikes such a specific, peculiar, wonderful tone, and we wanted to honor that spirit and figure out how to do it in a musical comedy form, because we knew that it was definitely gonna feel different, but we wanted to somehow embody that spirit of kind of cool, a little bit stanky, but also like a musical comedy. And so I think that became the biggest challenge in terms of how the songwriting played into that. What moments were really leaning into, hey, we're in like a musical comedy number right now, and what songs are actually kind of subverting that with a kind of more unexpected small town 1970s vibe. So yeah, it was sort of about finding that balance and how the score kind of followed those contours along the way.
Nice. Michael, from concept to a stage, because it went up in October, I believe, of 2019. When did the concept begin, and how long was that process?
Adam, did we start in 2015?
Yeah, I want to say maybe we got the rights in 2015 or 2016, like somewhere around. I think our very first reading was in 2016, so we must have started in 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, my files start in 2015. So I just did a quick look. The question was just how long was how was the gestation like?
Yeah, well, like now that we're looking at what 4 or 5 years, like that's how did that process go? There must have been some ups and downs and back and forth. And
I mean, there sure was. The greatest delay, I think, was actually on Adam's and my end. It wasn't getting started because it was taking the film and then figuring out, how is it going to be reduced? What are the plot changes going to be? How can we retain this feeling of cool, which is kind of unaffected, which is not for, it's not a great character trait on stage. And then even how can we try to find some more emotional threads throughout the piece without turning it fully into a musical comedy land. And so similarly, Adam was writing songs. I mean, I think he wrote 5 different opening numbers in 5 years.
We had a lot of different opening numbers. Yes.
Opening numbers. So once we got to about an act and a half, we did a workshop at the Roundabout, and there seemed to be enough there that they decided to continue developing it, even though their commission obligation was done. And over the next couple of years, we probably had a workshop maybe every 5 or 6 months as we finished, and then did revision and revision and revision. We went out to Northwestern University, where they have the American Musical Theater program, where both Adam and I had worked on shows before, and we worked with the students. And in fact, the finale, the last number in the show, was written there, and it was very useful, even though you've got 19-year-olds playing senior citizens and so forth. And then when the show opened, the Roundabout gave us many previews, because it was an out-of-town tryout where you really don't want to have one, which is in front of New York audiences and the New York press. So then by the time we froze and opened, I think we all felt pretty good about the show that we had. But funnily enough, as we, even after a great run, as we're looking to the future and the next productions, Adam and I have gone back with Lonnie Price, our original director, and Hal Luftig, our lead producer, and we're I think we've already rewritten probably at least 25 to 30% of the show.
Wow.
We have three or four new songs.
Wow. So in October, the one I saw, that was that the first time it got a full production outside of the schools and things like that? That was the first full everything.
It was, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which is it's I think it's somewhat unusual these days, even Off-Broadway, to kind of open a musical cold without having done a production elsewhere before, which is, I think, part of why Roundabout gave us so many previews, that we could almost treat it as kind of like an out-of-town production.
Yeah, is that a scary concept of opening in New York rather than getting a chance to play with it and mess with it and work with it? Because I went back and when I was doing my research, I looked at some of the critics' reviews, and it was a mixed bag of respondents, and I don't know if I'm not a big fan of critics, to be honest with you, because I always say, you know what, it doesn't matter what my opinion is or their opinion, just go enjoy theater and make up your own mind, because I loved it. I had so much fun when I went to go see it. So how does that as writers, how do critics affect you? Do you, or do you just go whatever?
That's it. I think Michael and I probably have different minds on this, because I don't really read the reviews. Like, okay. I did when I was first starting out, because there is this kind of thrill of like, oh my gosh, I wrote a show and people are writing about it and all of these things. But I found that even good reviews sort of like mess with my head in a weird way and kind of affect the way that you you think about the work, because you start writing it with those voices in your head. And I realized that wasn't why I was creating these things. And so I kind of let that go and just sort of stop letting it be part of my process.
Well, then I apologize now for putting that in your head.
Oh, no, please. No. I mean, the crazy thing is like that people do. I mean, you kind of you see that the reach that some of these things have. I mean, Scotland PA is a perfect example. We were a Critic's pick in the New York Times, and almost instantaneously, like floods of emails, like congratulating me on being a Critic's pick in the New York Times. And it's just so weird. Like I'm grateful for it, and grateful that people are excited about it, and it's in some ways something to be excited about. But it's also so strange. It's like you should just write me and congratulate me on like getting a show up. Like that feels that feels like the accomplishment to me.
So true. What about you, Michael? How do you respond to this? You know, when people write stuff?
It like Adam, it messes with your head either way. I will generally take a look at them. Maybe I'll have someone tell me, you know, like, hey, really stay away from such and such one, or you'll get a kick out of the, you know, in this case, the Times. But it's occasionally they'll write something that I do agree with, and it may, but it may not even be related to the writing. So there is a place for critics, but it's confusing to me because we have such few theater critics, and then their job is to review all of theater, which is to sort of say, okay, we have a book critic, they review all books. They review how to build your deck.
Yeah.
They review, you know, the generous baby method. I don't know what that is. I made that up. But like, you know, they review the new romance novel as well as the new pop fiction. So it's just not everything is for everybody, and some stuff is really for some people. And it's a shame that there isn't just a larger or more specialized, like in the Times. A lot of what will happen, or at least in the book review, is they'll give the book to another author, someone who understands what, you know, the other author is in dialogue with. And it's a much more, in my opinion, informed evaluation. But in the case of Scotland PA, it was still pre-COVID, but the papers were really shutting down. So we had New York Times, New Yorker, Time Out, maybe one other place. And then all of these places that, you know, they could have done damage, but they could have helped. New York Post, Wall Street Journal, Variety. It's a long list. Just didn't come see the show because the paper didn't hire them to go review, because we were told they only review Broadway unless there's something that really makes it, you know, we had a big movie star in it or something like that. Yeah. So that would have been it's useful when it's positive. And then I'll just finish it by quoting someone else, which is probably not even a true statement, but I sure like it. Leonard Bernstein, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I'll tell you what, because I've traveled all over the world and I've seen about everything there is to see. But in all of my travels and all my life, the one thing I've never seen is a statue of a critic.
Yep, it's true.
So. Well, and one thing that's interesting that I noticed, that shift in the landscape of the resources behind press outlets sort of being able to review smaller shows that aren't on Broadway has dwindled so much. And that's sort of the alarm, even though, you know, they're not part of my creative process. I like recognize that the attention and the thought that critics and reviewers put out into the world in terms of theater as an art form is valuable.
Yeah.
And even in the years between my production of Ordinary Days and the teeny tiny black box theater, that production, I think 3 times as many major papers came to review that tiny show than are now being sent to major off-Broadway. I mean, we were in one of the largest off-Broadway theaters in the city. And I've worked at smaller theaters off-Broadway in New York as well. And it's a real struggle for those theaters to get the kind of attention that they deserve, because the press resources just aren't there. So when you, at the beginning of the interview, when you said on your trip to New York, you came and made a point to see exclusively off-Broadway shows, I think that is an incredibly important thing for theater lovers to realize when you're coming to see shows. Like, if you really love the art form, you've got to sort of, like, these days, take the initiative to, like, see what's out there that is not being written about in the press, because there's so much great stuff out there, and so many smaller theater companies that are struggling because the ability to get attention and draw on audiences just isn't there anymore. And it's something that even in my sort of nascent career thus far, I've felt that shift, and it's alarming.
Yeah, I think more people need to go see the off-Broadway rather than the on Broadway, because off-Broadway, you're finding the future of musical theater. You're going to find something a little bit different. Sometimes, and in a few of the things I saw were not as polished, because the theater you're sitting in is, regular old seats, a
Sure.
stage, but you got to look beyond, the budget, right? You got to see it for what it is. And I think it's important that more people go out and check these shows out, like your show, etc. And your show, let's be honest, it's not that mainstream tap dancing show or the big dance numbers and all that sort of stuff. It's got that Little Shop of Horrors vibe. It's got that Evil Dead vibe. It's got that, it's just quirky, right? And personally, I love quirky. I love, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of dance numbers in a show, unless they serve a purpose, right? So that's why I'm probably drawn to your show as well.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of dancing, but it's I mean, it's a really good point, and it's something that I've been thinking about is, what is the significance even of Broadway in 2020? Because there's a massive conversation that's happening, especially at this moment, of who has access. But if you look at it, what does Broadway even mean in 2020? Well, it means a sanctioned theater that has over 499 seats, generally within a certain vicinity of Midtown. It means that they're eligible to win a Tony Award, which is only for Broadway. And then they're associated with larger budgets and maybe a little more rehearsal. And they have glamour, right? People, Broadway show sounds really exciting. But aside from that, which I don't really think is that much, except for the budget, which I think anyone would be happy to have, whether or not they, they need it. What's the difference? If it's 450 seats, if it's all the way downtown, if they've had a 4-week rehearsal process with top actors who constantly go back and forth between Broadway and off-Broadway, it's a label that I think has now become obsolete, as many of the nonprofits opened as a response to Broadway to try to present risky and new and exciting works. And then once they realized that those new and exciting works were indeed finding popular ways to make inroads with audiences, a prime example is Chorus Line and Hair transferring to Broadway. It became a how many can we transfer, and can we get any awards, so that'll help us raise money for our nonprofit. So really, I think if anyone's looking to do exciting new theater that doesn't cut along a super mainstream angle, the place to be is off-Broadway or regional.
Yeah, agreed. I've talked to so many people in my Sampler Platter group of musicals that their shows aren't made for Broadway. They're not made for the West End. They're smaller. And honestly, I'd rather have my show not make it to Broadway and not make it to the West End, but run in 1,000 community theaters. Because I'm going to make a lot more money and I got a lot more people seeing it. Right?
More people get to see the show.
Exactly.
And you know, why is it about putting on pageants to win an award? The thing is to make something joyous that you get lost inside. And I don't know, Adam and I like narrative-driven theater as opposed to attitude, which is sort of the moment. But I want to go on that journey, and so you know what? I'd sure like to go on that journey for $30 instead of 175.
I hear you. So, what is the future for Michael and Adam right now? Are you guys working on anything? Are you, like, I know you mentioned that you've rewritten maybe 25% of Scotland, PA, but is there anything else you guys are working on? Adam?
Yeah, well, happily, Roundabout has commissioned another new Adam, Gwon, Michael Mitnick musical, which we are excited to get started on. And we're in like very early stages, just trying to figure out what the next thing we want to write is. But we're excited that Roundabout has continued to be a home for us to figure that out. So we're in the throes of trying to find the story that catches fire for us.
Do you have any ideas, or not that you have to say because anything, but you've got a few that you're that's percolating and in process?
Yeah, I think
we have a few that we're circling, but it's we got the musical on in 5 years, which is actually pretty typical to fast.
Yeah.
In terms of timelines for these things. So in picking our next one, we just want to be really, really careful in what we pick. And I know personally, I want to make sure that there's a love story that's central to it, because boy, it just makes your job that much easier. Because aside from stuff like, I guess like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, there really aren't musicals that don't have love stories at some degree. Or Christmas Carol, I don't know.
So no murder is what you're saying in this next one, probably.
Probably we're going to have someone motivated by love of person rather than love of money.
Okay.
But only not because it was a mistake, just because we've already done that.
Nice. Well, Adam, Michael, I want to thank you guys both so much for coming on and talking to me today and telling us a little bit about yourselves and Scotland, PA, and I can't wait for the cast recording to come out in the future sometime.
Paul, thank you so much for having us on the show. It's really an honor, and it was so much fun.
I'm glad. But before we go, I always do this with all of my guests. I ask them 3 questions. Now, there's no right or wrong answer, but there is one wrong answer. Just to let you know. All right. So be prepared.
I'm nervous.
As you should be. This might be another TV show we'll put together. Musical theater questions. All right. First question. No context. Weber or Sondheim?
Sondheim for me.
Michael, for you?
Sondheim.
Any particular reason?
I like both, but Sondheim connects to me on a deeper level.
Okay. And Adam?
And it's the lyrics that tip it for me. Those Sondheim lyrics, there's nothing like them.
Yep. For this one, there is no right or wrong answer. This one is more of an opinion because they're completely different, right? But I just like to mess with people and ask them and ask these questions. All right. One correct answer each. Awesome. Question number 2. If you could turn another movie into a musical, what would it be? Now, you could make this a serious or one that you just always want to do because it's insane. Because I was talking with my friend, we talked about Terminator, the musical. It's going to be awful, but not about it.
This is not any one specific movie, but I always wanted to do like a Wes Anderson kind of movie musical. Like I think his style, again, talking about style and how you would like translate an interesting film style into a stage version. His films I find very intriguing in that regard. Like how would you create the Wes Anderson world on stage in a musical?
that would be really interesting to go see. That's wow. Michael, anything?
The ones that are coming to mind are ones that I still want to do possibly someday. One I know I'm not going to do and probably needs to be updated in many ways, but I think is structured and written almost exactly like a musical comedy. No wonder, because it was written by Paul Rudnick, is fantastic. But is this Kevin Kline starred film In and Out?
Yes.
So I don't quite know how PC it is these days, but with an update, I think it would be a very charming music.
Okay, cool. I like those answers. 2 more points for each of you. All right. And finally, the number one question with the right or wrong answer. Audience members eating food in the theater, yes or
no? I'm a no on that one. Except we did it in our show. So I'm conflicted. I guess it depends on the food. French fries are not very noisy.
It's true.
I had a traumatic experience with someone eating M&Ms next to me at a Broadway musical, and it like drove me insane. And I was one of those. Yeah, it was like it's one of the, I remember the feeling like of rage in my stomach at the person next to me eating M&Ms. It was at the Wedding Singer.
Michael, how do you feel about that food in the theater?
Like Adam said, we're guilty because more than just the regular concessions, we added to it with very smelly French fries. But I will say I'm a major fan of dinner theater.
Okay.
So my ideal production of Scotland, PA would be at a place where there were little tables and you could have burgers and fries and beer while you watch this story about burgers and fries and drinking. That kind of atmosphere is fun. But otherwise, I think if you go to the theater, I really just want to be sucked in and not distracted by anything around me. It's coughing or chewing or anything like that. I want to get totally lost. And so that's why I'd even remove, people who smell bad, people who are sick, people who are tall, people who are people. I'm enjoying the idea of social distancing theater where it's just me.
One seat in the middle of the theater just for Michael. That's it.
Yeah, that would be the dream.
All right. Your answers were justified when the show has a particular thing like your French fries. I totally understand. Because people understand that concept. Or the dinner theater. That's totally justified answer. I usually accept no. So, but you gave me a good caveat and justified and you backed it up. So another point for each of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Not that it makes any difference because I don't have that much power or anything. So, but those are 3 correct answers, and that was perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. So, again, we were speaking with Adam Gwon and Michael Mitnick today on Be Our Guest. Tune in next week as we'll be talking with another guest or guests. We talk about their love, life, and passion. That is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff, and I'll see you when I see you.